What's going on YouTube? It's the Middle School Math Man here. Today's video is going to be on simplifying radicals. Now these radicals are just going to have numbers. Eventually we are going to get into radicals that have variables as well. But this is just going to be the basics, just with numbers. So how we're going to do this is we have the square root of 162. Now the square root of 162, 162 is not a perfect square. So if we were to take the square root of 162, we would get a decimal. So we are going to simplify this into simplest radical form. So how we're going to do that is the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out what are the factors of 162. So if you remember back to factor trees, we need to think of any two numbers that multiply together to give us 162. So one example is 27 and 6. So now we just need to simplify these little branches, or whatever you want to call them, until we can't simplify anymore. So 27 is 9 times 3. Then we can break down the 9 into 3 times 3. So we just need to break down the numbers or the factors as far as they can go until we can't break those numbers down anymore. So we have 4 3s and a 2. So what I like to do is I like to rewrite those factors underneath the square root sign. So 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 2. That is the same thing as the square root of 162. Those are the factors of 162. And if you multiplied those all together, you would get 162. So we're looking for pairs of 2 because we are taking the square root of 162. We're looking for pairs of 2. So we have a pair of 3's there and another pair of 3's there. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to take one 3 out front and another 3 out front. Now, the reason why we can do that is 3 times 3 is 9. So we have two 9's underneath that square root symbol, and the square root of 9 is 3. So we can actually take the square root of 9, and it's 3. So we're going to move that out front. And when we do that, we're going to have two 3's out front, and then what's left underneath that square root sign is a 2. So we're not fully simplified yet. 3 times 3 is 9. So the square root of 162 in simplest radical form is 9 times the square root of 2. Let's try another one. 117. 117 can be broken down into 13 times 9. 13 is a prime number, so that's not going to break down, but 9 can be broken down into 3 times 3. So now that I have my factors, I'm going to rewrite them. It doesn't matter the order you put them in underneath the radical. I just like to group them so I can see my pairs, so that's why I put the 3's next to each other. So I have a pair of 3's, and again, 3 times 3 is 9. So the square root of 9 is 3. I'm going to actually bring the 3 out front. And what's left is 3 times the square root of 13. So every single time you have a non-perfect square root and a non-perfect cube root, which we're going to talk about in a second, you figure out its factors and then look for pairs of 2 for square roots. Moving on to cubed roots. It's going to be the same exact steps. We have 96, so 12 times 8 is 96. So we're just breaking it down into its factors. Once we have that, I'm going to rewrite it underneath the cubed root. We have 5 2's, and then we have 1 3. So with square roots, we looked for groups of 2. With cubed roots, we're going to look for groups of 3. That's really the only difference. So I have 3 2's there. That's one group. So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, and the cubed root of 8 is 2, so I'm going to bring a 2 out front. And when I do that, I have 2 times the cubed root of, what's left underneath now is 2 times 2 times 3. So I'm going to simplify that. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. So your final answer is going to be 2 times the cubed root of 12. Last one we're going to talk about. We have 297. But it's negative. So what I like to do is I just kind of like to ignore the negative at first. So I have 297. That can break down into 33 times 9. 9 is 3 times 3. See, 33 is 11 times 3. Those are both prime now. So that's broken down as far as it can go. So I'm going to rewrite it. I have 3 times 3 times 3 times 11. So I know in the back of my mind, I know I have a negative sign. So I'm going to do something with a negative sign. But I'm just going to kind of ignore it until the very end. So I have a group of 3 here. So I'm going to take that out front. So I know that it's negative, so I just kind of ignored it till the very end, and I'm just going to put it in front of the number that I moved out front. So that's all I really do with the negatives. I just kind of wait till the very end, and then I just stick the negative sign in front of the number out front. So that video was on radicals, simplifying non-perfect square roots and non-perfect cube roots. So same steps every time, figure out its factors, and then the big difference is with square roots, we're looking for groups of 2. With cube roots, we're looking for groups of 3.